In imperial China, Mei Ling, a humble silk weaver, joins a secret rebellion using coded patterns hidden in silk to defy the emperor's rule. Amid betrayal, love, and sacrifice, she weaves not just fabric but the fate of a revolution.
I was born in a small village nestled between the misty hills and narrow alleyways of Qing Dynasty China, where the air is heavy with the scent of earth and smoke, and the quiet clatter of looms weaves the fabric of everyday life. My name is Mei Ling. From earliest memory, my fingers have danced between threads of silk, drawing patterns as delicate as whispers on the loom. It was a craft passed down from my mother and her mother before her, a tradition as old as the silken mountains themselves. Yet beneath the beauty of these threads lay a harsh reality, the relentless weight of the imperial tax. Each season, the tax collectors came like shadows at dusk, their demands insatiable, their methods cruel. The coffers of the emperor grew fat while our bellies hollowed. I remember the day the tax collectors rode into our village, their banners snapping in the wind, their soldiers rounding up harvest and livestock with merciless efficiency. My father, tall and strong, stood between them and our home, but even his courage was no match for the iron will of the imperial enforcers. When they left, they took more than goods, they took his life. The loss carved a hollow in my heart, a wound that would never fully heal, but it also ignited a fire within me. In the days that followed, the village whispered of secret societies, groups that moved unseen, their members woven into the fabric of towns and cities like hidden stitches. They spoke of rebellion, of resistance against the tyranny that bled us dry. At first, I dismissed these tales as fanciful stories told by those desperate for hope. But then, in the crowded market where I sold my silken wares, I felt a presence, a shadow slipping close, a folded piece of cloth pressed into my hand. The silk was unlike any I had woven, embroidered with patterns that seemed to shift beneath my gaze, symbols I did not understand but felt drawn to. The stranger's eyes met mine for a heartbeat, silent but speaking volumes of danger and promise. As I unfolded the cloth in the quiet of my room, the evening light caught the threads, revealing a map of sorts and a message stitched in code. My heart pounded with fear and excitement. What was this path that beckoned? Could I, a simple weaver, truly stand against the might of the emperor? The days that followed were a blur of whispered meetings in shadowed corners and furtive glances across bustling streets. The loom's rhythm continued, but now it carried a new meaning. Each thread I wove was a silent act of defiance, a hidden message waiting to be unraveled by those who dared to dream of freedom. I thought of my father, of the sacrifices made by so many who suffered under the yoke of oppression. I thought of my family, my village, and the countless others crushed beneath the heavy hand of imperial greed. And I knew, with a certainty as strong as the silk I wove, that I could no longer remain silent. The rebellion was no longer a distant rumor. It was a seed planted in my soul, growing between the threads of fear and hope. This was only the beginning of my journey, a journey woven with peril and courage, shadow and light. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the alleyways into twilight, I stepped into the unknown, ready to weave my fate with the threads of rebellion. The room was bathed in the soft glow of lantern light, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts upon the wooden walls. The scent of jasmine tea mingled with the faint, sharp tang of silk dye as Madame Hoa sat across from me, her silver hair braided intricately with threads of shimmering silk. Her eyes, calm yet piercing, fixed on the length of fabric she held gently between her fingers. "See here, Mei Ling," she whispered, her voice a caress in the quiet chamber. "Not all patterns are what they seem. The emperor's eyes are everywhere, but his mind is not trained to see the secrets hidden in plain sight." I leaned closer, examining the silk as she traced delicate curves and subtle shifts in the weave. At first glance, it was a beautiful floral motif, but Madame Ho pointed out minute variations, a slight elongation of a petal here, a subtle change in hue there that transformed the pattern into a silent message. Each thread, each knot can carry meaning, she said. A language woven in silk, invisible to those who do not know how to read it. Her teachings opened a world I had never imagined. During the days that followed, I returned to the loom with a new purpose. The rhythmic clatter of the shuttle became a heartbeat of rebellion. Madame Ho guided my hands as I practiced weaving coded symbols into the fabric, each thread a letter, each pattern a word. The lessons were painstaking. I had to learn to balance the beauty of the silk with the precision needed to convey messages undetected. Mistakes could mean death to me, to the rebellion. Madame Ho was patient but firm, her wisdom etched into every movement she taught me. One evening, as the moon cast pale silver light through the lattice windows, Madame Hoa shared stories of ancient silk artisans who had once used their craft to protect forbidden knowledge. Our ancestors wove secrets to survive, she said, and so will we. The gravity of our mission settled over me like a shroud. I was no longer merely a weaver. I was a messenger, a keeper of hope. Madame Hua's teachings gave me the tools to thread defiance into the very fabric of our lives. With each piece I wove, I felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier, but so did my resolve. The silk was fragile, but within its delicate folds lay strength, a quiet resistance that could not be crushed by brute force. At the next gathering of the rebels, I presented my first coded silk. The room was thick with tension, eyes sharp and suspicious. I laid the fabric before them, my fingers trembling slightly. Slowly, the expressions in the room softened from doubt to cautious approval. Jin, standing at the back cloaked in shadows, gave a brief nod, a spark of encouragement that steadied my heart. Madame Hoa smiled, her eyes shining with pride. Our silent language was born. In the weaving of each thread, a new chapter of rebellion began. The silk that once clothed the empire's elites now held the power to unravel its tyranny. But with every new skill came new dangers. Governor Zhuo's enforcers prowled ever closer, their cold eyes hunting for signs of dissent. I had to learn not just to weave, but to live in the shadows, to move unseen and unheard. Madame Ho taught me the art of silence, how to speak volumes without uttering a word. The nights grew longer and colder, but beneath the surface of fear, a fierce flame flickered inside me. The rebellion was no longer a distant hope. It was a living, breathing force, woven into every thread I spun. As I sat by the loom one night, the patterns emerging beneath my fingers carried more than messages, they carried the dreams of a people too long silenced. Each knot was a promise, each color a declaration we would not be broken. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by danger and betrayal. Yet, in the silent patterns of silk, I found a voice, and with that voice, I was ready to fight. The loom sang beneath my hands, the threads whispering secrets that only those brave enough to listen could hear. The rebellion had found its language, and I would become its storyteller. The night settled over the narrow alleyways like a dark cloak, muffling the city's usual clatter, and leaving only the soft whisper of silk against skin. I stood beneath the flickering lantern light of the hidden courtyard, my heart a thudding drum in my chest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, the shadows pooling around me like ink. It was here, in this secretive embrace of darkness, that I was to meet Jin, the man whose name I had heard whispered among the rebels. A figure both feared and revered. I tightened the folds of my worn cloak and glanced at the figure emerging from the shadows. He was lean, with a face marked by a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, a testament to battles fought and survived. His eyes, sharp and calculating, flicked over me quickly, measuring, assessing. He moved with the quiet confidence of a soldier, his presence both commanding and unsettling. "You must be Mei Ling," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've heard of your work with the silk." I nodded, feeling the weight of his gaze. "And you are Jin. Madame Hoa spoke of you." He offered a brief smile, fleeting yet sincere. "I'm here to protect those who dare to weave more than fabric." Our first moments together were careful, each word weighed and measured, a dance of quiet trust forged in the shadows. Madame Hoa had prepared me well, teaching me the delicate language of coded patterns stitched into silk, a secret only those who understood the art could read. But meeting Jin brought a new dimension to the rebellion. His knowledge of imperial tactics and his boldness offered hope that we could strike back, not just survive. Madame Ho's presence in the courtyard was a steadying force. Her silver hair, braided with threads of silk, caught the lantern light, giving her an almost ethereal glow. She watched us with calm, knowing eyes, her wisdom a silent assurance that we were on the right path. Trust is our greatest weapon, she reminded me softly. But also our greatest risk. Over the following days, Jin and I trained side by side. He taught me how to move unseen, how to listen for the faintest signs of danger in the bustling streets. I shared with him the secrets of weaving messages into the silk patterns that spoke of plans, warnings, and hopes. Each thread we spun carried a message not just to our comrades, but to the oppressive regime that sought to silence us. One evening, beneath a sky dusted with stars, Jin spoke of his past. His voice was a low rumble, heavy with the ghosts of battles and the weight of loss. I was once like those who enforce the taxes, he said, eyes fixed distant. A soldier of the empire, believing I did right. But I saw too much, families torn apart, children left starving. It changed me. I listened, empathy blooming within me. His pain mirrored my own, the loss of my father to the cruel tax collectors. It was this shared grief that bound us tighter than any oath. Our bond grew, fragile yet fierce, as we prepared for the covert missions that would test our resolve. The city around us hummed with danger. Every shadow could hide a spy, every whisper a threat. Yet, in Jin's steadfast presence, I found a courage I had never known. As we readied ourselves for a raid on an imperial supply caravan, the tension was palpable. Weapons were checked in silence. Final instructions whispered beneath the breath of the night. The silk patterns I had woven into my garments felt heavier than ever, not just cloth, but a symbol of rebellion and hope. "We stand together," Jin said, gripping my shoulder firmly. "No matter what comes." I met his gaze, feeling the fierce determination burning in his eyes. "Together," I echoed. The night stretched before us, a canvas of shadows and possibility. The silk threads we wove were more than fabric. They were the lifeblood of a rebellion, fragile yet unyielding. And in the quiet moments before the storm, I understood that this alliance, born of pain and hope, might just be the spark that ignited change. But with every step deeper into the shadows, the danger grew sharper. The Emperor's enforcers were relentless, and the cost of defiance would soon be clear. Still, in Jin's unwavering presence and the secret language of silk, I found a reason to believe that even in the darkest alleys, allies could be found, and hope could be woven anew. And so, with the dawn still far away, we stepped into the night, threads of rebellion binding us tightly, ready to face whatever the shadows held next. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the narrow room as whispers curled through the gathered rebels like smoke. Every glance exchanged held the weight of suspicion. Every breath seemed laden with unspoken fears. I sat among them, my fingers twitching, the rhythm of the loom that once brought me solace now replaced by the tremors of doubt. A spy. The word echoed in my mind, a venomous seed planting itself deep within the fragile garden we had so carefully nurtured. Madame Hoa's serene face was etched with a rare tension that night. Her usual calm gave way to tight lips and narrowed eyes, scanning the room as if the traitor might reveal themselves in the flicker of a shadow. Jin stood nearby, his posture rigid, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to snap. The scars on his face seemed to deepen under the low light, each one a silent testament to battles fought and lost. But tonight, the fiercest fight was not against imperial soldiers, but against the invisible enemy within. "We cannot afford to let fear consume us," Madame Hoa whispered, her voice a fragile thread holding us together. "But we must be vigilant. The silk we weave carries more than messages now, it carries our very lives." Her words stirred me to action. That night, I sat at my loom long after the others had retired, weaving patterns that spoke in secret codes only those initiated could read. Each thread was a warning, a plea for caution. My hands shook as I worked, the weight of responsibility pressing down like the oppressive sky before a storm. Every knot tied, every color chosen, was a silent declaration that we would not be undone by betrayal. Jin's anger was a tempest barely held in check. I overheard heated words exchanged in the shadows, his voice low but sharp. "We must root out the traitor before they destroy everything," he growled, eyes blazing with a mixture of pain and fury. Yet even he was unsure, his trust fractured like the delicate silk we wove. The rebellion was a fragile tapestry, and the threat of a spy threatened to tear it apart thread by thread. I found myself retreating to the rooftops, the cool night air a balm to my racing heart. Below, the narrow alleyways twisted like veins through the city, hiding secrets and dangers alike. Alone under the vast canopy of stars, I grappled with my fears. Who could I trust? Every smile, every gesture in the daylight now seemed suspect. Yet amid the loneliness, a fierce determination kindled within me. This rebellion was more than just defiance, it was our hope, our dream of freedom woven into every strand of silk. The nights that followed were a dance between shadows and light, trust and suspicion. Messages moved quietly through coded patterns, each one a lifeline and a warning. We tightened our circles, watched each other with wary eyes, and yet the threat lingered, a silent blade hanging over our heads. I learned to listen not just to words but to silences, to the spaces between heartbeats where truth often hid. Betrayal was a poison, but it was also a test. It revealed the strength of our bonds and the resilience of our spirits. I held on to the hope that even in the darkest moments, the threads of loyalty and courage could withstand the unraveling. As dawn approached one morning, the first light filtering through the latticed windows, I felt the weight of the coming storm. The rebellion's fate hung in the balance, and I was no longer just a weaver of silk, I was a weaver of destiny. And as the city awoke beneath the heavy sky, the questions remained: who had betrayed us? How deep did the treachery run? And could we survive the shadows that now threatened to consume us all? The answers lay hidden, waiting to be uncovered in the delicate dance of silk and shadow that defined our fight for freedom. But one thing was certain: our thread was not yet broken, and I would weave it stronger than ever before. The faint glow of the lantern cast trembling shadows across the walls of Madame Ho's quiet chamber, where bolts of shimmering silk lay scattered like treasures waiting to be transformed. I sat before the loom, the familiar rhythm of the shuttle weaving a steady beat beneath my fingers. But tonight, the weaving was different, not just a simple pattern for sale at the market, but a secret language, a silent code to speak in defiance of the Emperor's watchful eye. Madame Ha's presence was a steady anchor beside me, her silver hair glinting faintly in the muted light as she leaned close, her voice a soft whisper threading knowledge into my eager mind. Each fold, each color, each pattern, she explained, can carry meaning beyond beauty if woven with intention. The silk can be our voice when words are too dangerous to speak. At first, the complexity of it overwhelmed me. How could the delicate twists and turns of thread become words? How could fabric carry the weight of a coded message strong enough to coordinate rebellion? Yet as Madame Hoa patiently guided my hands and eyes, the mystery began to unravel. We practiced the ancient symbols, hidden signs passed down through generations of silk artisans and secret societies, teaching me how a small change in a knot or a subtle shift in hue could transform a simple scarf into a map or a warning. I remember the moment it first clicked. We sat side by side, a length of pale silk stretched taut across the loom. Madame Hua pointed to a series of interlaced patterns, waves that looked like water but spoke of movement, dots that resembled stars but signaled meeting points. My heart quickened as I realized the power we held, concealed in plain sight. The Emperor's soldiers see only silk, Madame Hoa said quietly, but we see the threads of hope woven between them. The nights that followed were a blur of practice and discovery. I learned to embed messages within the delicate weave, hiding calls to action, warnings of danger, and words of encouragement. Each piece I crafted became a vessel for rebellion, a silent conversation carried in the folds of a garment. Madame Hua's teachings extended beyond mere technique. She shared stories of past resistances, of artisans who had saved lives with nothing but their craft and courage. One evening, as the rain tapped softly against the window, I wove a message destined for Jin and the others waiting in the shadows. The pattern was intricate, a tapestry of curves and lines that, to the untrained eye, was simply elegant and serene. But hidden within were instructions for the next covert meeting, a plan to sabotage the imperial tax caravan. My hands trembled slightly, the weight of responsibility settling upon me. This was no longer just about weaving silk. It was about weaving the future. Madame Ho watched silently as I worked, her calm gaze never wavering. "Remember, Mai Ling," she said softly, "silk is fragile, yet it can bind. The strength of the rebellion lies in these threads, delicate but unbreakable when woven together." The thought comforted me, even as fear whispered in the back of my mind. Every coded thread was a risk, a chance for betrayal, capture, or worse. But it was also a beacon, a way to connect those who dared to dream of freedom. Weeks passed, each day deepening my skill and resolve. I began to see the world differently, the patterns in the marketplace, the colors of the banners. Even the way the light caught the folds of fabric, all seemed charged with new meaning. The silk was no longer just cloth. It was a language of rebellion, a testament to our unyielding spirit. One afternoon, Madame Hua took me to a secret chamber beneath the city, where rolls of silk covered the walls like ancient scrolls. Here, the elders of the secret society gathered, their whispered conversations weaving a tapestry of plans and hopes. I felt the weight of their trust as they examined my work, nodding with approval at the subtle beauty and precision of my coded messages. The silk we created was carried through the city, hidden in plain sight, scarves, sashes, even the hems of dresses. To the untrained eye, they were mere garments, but to us, they were lifelines. Each thread was a promise that even under the emperor's oppressive gaze, the spirit of resistance thrived. Yet the danger was ever present. I could not forget the stories Madame Hao shared of those who had been caught, their crafts twisted to betray them. The fear was a constant companion, sharpening my senses and steel. I learned to observe carefully, to trust cautiously, and to weave with both hope and caution. One night, as I finished a particularly complex piece, Jin arrived in the shadows outside Madame Ha's chamber. His sharp eyes studied the silk with a mixture of admiration and urgency. "This will save lives," he said quietly. "Your skill gives us an edge we never had." His words filled me with both pride and a fierce determination. The silk was our weapon, subtle but powerful. In every delicate thread, I saw the possibility of change, a future where my family and community could live free from fear and oppression. As the moon rose high over the city, casting silver light on the quiet streets, I knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril. But armed with the coded loom and the wisdom of Madame Ha, I was ready to weave a new destiny. The rebellion's heartbeat pulsed in every thread, and I was its silent voice. The loom sang beneath my hands, a melody of hope spun in silk and shadow, weaving the first threads of a revolution. And yet, even as the silk took shape, a question lingered in my mind: how long could we keep our secret hidden before the emperor's spies unraveled the threads of our resistance? The answer lay in every stitch, in every choice, and in the courage to continue weaving no matter the cost. The night deepened, but in the fragile beauty of silk, I found strength. The rebellion was no longer just a whisper in the dark, it was a tapestry of defiance, threaded with hope and the promise of dawn. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the worn wooden walls of the small room where Jin and I sat. The air was thick with the faint scent of burning wax and damp earth, a quiet contrast to the storm brewing within us. I watched as Jin's scarred hands clenched and unclenched, the tremor betraying the weight of memories he had long tried to bury. Mei Ling, he began, voice low and strained, there are truths I have kept hidden, truths I must share if we are to stand together. His sharp eyes met mine, glistening with an emotion I had not seen before, vulnerability. He spoke of a time when he wore the uniform of the Imperial Army, a soldier bound by duty to the very regime we now opposed. His tales were painted with the harsh strokes of betrayal and sorrow. He told me of the brutal tax raids that swept through villages like a merciless tide, of families torn apart and lives shattered beneath the iron fist of Governor Zhao. Jin's voice faltered as he recounted the day he refused an order to burn a village where innocents hid beneath silk canopies, a defiance that marked him a traitor to the empire, but a hero to those who suffered. As he narrated, I could see the scars etched not just on his skin, but deep within his soul. Each memory seemed to bind him tighter to a past he wished to escape, yet could not forget. I carry ghosts, he admitted, but I fight to lay them to rest. The room felt smaller, the silence between us heavy with unspoken fears. I reached out, placing my hand over his. Your courage gives me hope, Jin. We are not alone in this fight. Outside, the distant clatter of Imperial patrols reminded us of the ever-present danger. Yet, in that moment, beneath the fragile light and shadows, a fragile trust blossomed. Later, beneath the pale moonlight, I watched as Jin trained. His movements were fierce and precise, a dance of shadows and steel. Sweat glistened on his scarred skin, each strike a testament to his relentless resolve. The anger that fueled him was a double-edged sword, a powerful weapon, but one that sometimes blinded him to caution. Back in the quiet of the night, I found him restless, haunted expressions crossing his face as he wrestled with dreams of blood and betrayal. I sat silently by his side, empathy swelling within me. The path we had chosen was perilous, and Jin's burdens were heavier than most. Our bond deepened with every shared secret and silent vow. His past shaped not only his skills, but the very soul of the rebellion. I knew that his recklessness, born of pain and a desperate need for redemption, would test us all. Yet, in his fire, I found my own courage rekindled. Together I whispered into the night, we will weave a future from these broken threads. The echoes of Jin's past reverberated in my heart, a solemn reminder that the fight for freedom was as much a battle within as it was against the empire. And as dawn approached, I felt the first stirrings of hope, fragile, fierce, and unyielding. Our journey was only beginning.